Good morning, everybody. I'm Dottie Hammer, a member of the Mission and Justice Committee, and we are more than pleased to have our two representatives from Prairie Island here this morning, and they're going to clarify what tribe they're from, because what our publicity is going to go all wrong. So we are really pleased to have you both here, and they're going to do their own show, and all we have to do is listen carefully, and if you have questions to ask, please save them for a few minutes at the end. Also, I'm just telling you that tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day, and that should you be in Red Wing, you should absolutely see the gorgeous wall that has been painted and is just now finished and will be, are you going to mention it? Yeah. Okay, I won't say more. So please enjoy our two guests.
Hello, there we go. Ha, adakyapi, ampetu yohiam patawi amakiapi, bede wakantuan da makota tintuwinta matahanichadwati. Hello, my relatives. My Dakota name is Eastern Day Woman. I am Dakota from Prairie Island, but I live in Red Wing. Thank you for having me here today. I come with my trustee assistant, Kim Lampe, with the Honoring Dakota Project, as Dottie had mentioned. We've been a part of it in the last year, and we did a mural that kind of, when we did community engagement sessions from last year, gathering the two communities together to come up with the idea of, and through those engagement sessions, Jeremy and Collins came up with the idea of the mural, and it will be unveiled tomorrow on Indigenous Peoples Day. In Red Wing, we have something just a little bit different. It's actually called Chief Red Wing Day, and they did a proclamation in 2014. So they were a little ahead of the rest of the world when getting a jump start on switching it from Columbus to Indigenous people. So it's a little bit more personalized for Red Wing. And Red Wing, his name is Hupahushaduta. So that means his swan's elbow dipped in scarlet is what that means. And then the Washichu translation ends up being Red Wing. So with our people, we get, and he was the chief in that time right before Dakota people were exiled out of the state of Minnesota. And so he also had another name, which they refer to in the Goodhue County Historical Society is Tatankamani, which would be walking buffalo. So in 2020, what was that then? I think so. Goodhue County Health and Human Services came to Prairie Island Family Services after they learned about the residential schools in Canada and said that we wanted to do something for Prairie Island, because you could go through our whole city and not know that there was an Indigenous tribe attached to that city. But yet we bear the name Red Wing, and we don't even know where that name comes from. So that was 3 years ago. It was in the works, and then finally, 2022, we started the community engagements to start this. And what we didn't really know this when we were doing it is, Indigenous people, we can have all the knowledge that we want from our cultures and our ceremonies and things like that. But because we have a shared history, we're never going to move forward. So when they tell people like me to get over it and just move forward, I wish I could. But we're all locked in the trauma of the land. It's stuck in the land. So that's why we decided to, with the Honoring Dakota Project, is open up our borders on Prairie Island, invite people into our community to learn about who we are as Dakota people, because I'm born and raised in Red Wing. I've never left. And so when people talk about things in other tribal nations, I don't, other than Facebook, I don't go and watch movies or do anything. I live with the land. I have a whole lifestyle that goes with the land. So I don't really know about other things other than here in my home. There was a point to that, but that train left. I guess it wasn't important. I'll circle back if it was important. But just the point that I've never left here, right? And so Red Wing Public Schools did something kind of cool. They asked Prairie Island to join in on their Veterans Day celebration because they know that we, Indigenous people, really honor and hold our warriors, our veterans, with a very high standard. And so they invited us, and that's when I learned when we engage together with both of our ceremonies, that actually unlocks the land, the trauma in the land, and then we're able to move forward together in reconciliation. So we started the community engagements in January. And so I'm going to touch a little bit on land acknowledgement too. So those of you who don't know, I'm also on the Red Wing Public Schools board. And recently, if you go to watch those YouTube videos, I've urged the rest of my board members to give back that parcel of land that we sit on, because it's part of the half-breed track of what they sit on. So the half-breed track, so I descend, and if I was to pull out my ancestry map, I'm pretty sure I'm 6th generation from Chief Wabasha. That's my descending chief. And my children are the 7th generations. And if you've paid attention to Indigenous people, we always act in a way that we consider what's going to happen to those next 7 generations that aren't here yet. That's how we make decisions in life. And so our descending chief, Chief Wabasha, was the last one to sign anything with the state of Minnesota. And what he did is he put that land, he gave it to the half-breeds, is what they call us, the ones who have mixed ancestry. And it extends from Himanicha, Barnes Bluff, all the way to Wabasha. And he put it in the Washichu parents' names so that the government couldn't come and take that land from those half-breed children. But many of you may not know, but Minnesota was used to industrialize the rest of the country. Our toilet systems, our underground piping for the toilet systems is made from our hills, our sacred spaces like Himanicha. So what they did was they called these mobsters in Nevada and said, there's land up here, but we can't get it. So in the middle of winter, Lake Pepin, they cut holes in the middle of the ice, put those Washichu parents in there and said, give us your land. Otherwise, we're killing your Indian kids. So those Washichu parents gave that land, and University of Minnesota sat on that land. And then they gave all these county schools these parcels of land to start schools. And they gave Red Wing that parcel of land in Frontenac. And I said, give it back to Prairie Island. That's the right thing to do. Instead, we have this argument, and you can go in, I think, when do we start the land sale talk? March. It goes all the way from that. So what Prairie Island does is when we get land back, because we got Swedish homestead back, is we restore the environment back to its natural state. We put up a bark lodge, and then we opened up our community to non-Indigenous people to come live with us like Dakota people do together for a moment in time. And that's what the land likes. The land likes when all of us get along, but the land likes when we do the right thing too. So after much, I mean, if you watched me on those videos, it's heart-wrenching because they describe that piece of, it's under an acre, they describe it as a swamp. And to me, that's a living, viable, breathing wetland that is going to save us after we stop harming our home. It's the wetlands, the oak savannas, the prairie systems that is going to detox this world from all the garbage that we've done to it. So why not give it back to Prairie Island? And then comments were like, well, what do they want with it? As if we're second-class citizens, which my grandmother was born not a citizen who was full-blooded Dakota. But those are the things that are still going on today because the laws and rules are still not changed from when they were created. And that's what also keeps us in the past, too. So, I sit here for a minute because I feel all of your true sincerity as I sit up here and speak about our problems today. And it's meaningful to me because our hearts are together. So we talk about a lot of things too. I am of mixed ancestry. I come from, my mother is 80, she did that Ancestry, or 23andMe, she's 80% Finnish. Hot dog, that spicy Scandinavian. Who knew? But, so, I myself am married to a Hispanic male, and he likes to say us Dakota women are very spicy, like maybe more so. And I said, well, you know what? My Finnish mother can keep up with my Dakota aunties and grandma pretty well. So I would like to say it's not limited to one race or another. It's the people that come in the area. So all of you are pretty spicy is what I'm pretty much saying here today. We all tend to like gravitate people like ourselves, right? And so Indigenous people, we're not all the same, but we kind of have same formats, right? Different beliefs, different ways to do things. But we do, more so than none, have an agreement on a prophecy that happened that, as you can see, I'm very vibrant in ink. I like colorful things, so that's why I inked my body with many colorful things. I have a turtle on my arm. And in that turtle is the representations of man. So this is just kind of what was taught to me is that our home is going to get sick, really, really sick. And the four great powers of man are going to come together and save her. So, but we're not doing a very good job of that right now. We're too busy fighting with one another. Well, not all of us. Some of us are. But that's kind of so. My uncle, we don't record our ways and things and don't show them off, right? It's oral traditions and they're sacred. And to us, you show up and that's how you, what's a phrase we say all the time? People say knowledge is power. No, it isn't. It's a gift. It is a gift that I show up for every day. And I say I'm going to do these things in exchange for you to give me your knowledge, right? I'm going to show up. But we become a society that knowledge is power. We can just get a book and just get it and take it and do what we want with it. But we have to remember that when we gain that knowledge, too, we have to use it for the greater of good. So I have a lot of privilege coming from Prairie Island because in the United States of America, I'm considered a protected class, aren't I? American Indian. So they're going to put a lot of our problems on a pedestal and leave others behind. So I have that privilege. So anything that I have privilege with my Native American status, I'm going to use for everybody else because that's the right thing to do, right? So as taught to me from when I was a little girl that you never hoard anything. When you're abundant in something, you give it out to somebody who doesn't have something. And on Prairie Island, we started a cultural garden in 2015. And Uncle said that we used to outsource our sage, one of our sacred medicines, because it didn't grow on Prairie Island anymore, because it got disrespected, and that plant went away. And so we would have to outsource to Canada for all of our sage, for our sacred ceremonies. And so when we brought sage back in 2015 with our cultural garden, sage started feeling respected and honored. And then we became abundant on Prairie Island. So abundant, in fact, that we invite other Indigenous people to come into our island to come harvest sage with us, and then we also give them transplants to start in their own communities. It's an abundancy. And when you're abundant in something, you have to give to others so nobody else goes without. So these are the teachings that were taught to me and that keep me. So the word Dakota is your friend. We have a set of virtues and values. There's 12, but normally we'll just focus on the 7, right? And in that 7, they're geared to keep me to be a good relative to you, right? Because to be a Dakota, if you call yourself a Dakota and you don't walk this way, that's the greatest shame of life, right? So it means that I have to make sure that all of my relatives are fed, clothed, have all their basic human needs met. And if I don't do that, then I'm not being a very good relative, right? And sometimes we can have conflicts, and trust me, I come from a very spicy family, as I said. With that, some of us are half Finnish and like Dakota, actually half German in the Buck family. So that's where I'm going to tell you. So a lot of you wonder who you think I have kids that are basketball superstars, right? No, I don't have kids that are basketball superstars. Those are my nieces and nephews. Actually, they're my cousin's kids. Richard Buck, he is my cousin. His mother and my father are brother and sister, but in our family, we're raised as brother and sister, and so those are my nieces and nephews. Tisha, the oldest one, she's, what'd you say, 28, 27, 28? And I'm 43, so I was, 15, 16 when she was born? But they're like my kids, because I was the auntie that went and did everything with them. So I'm actually Diso, the youngest one, his godmother. So that's how close our Buck family is. So it's a lot of Germans from Goodhue. And, my mom's Finnish. So, but my grandpa, when he met my grandma, because he's full-blooded German from Goodhue, they disowned him. So I don't actually know any of my Buck side. We don't know any of them, but I can guarantee we're related to every single one of them in Goodhue, because that's where my grandpa comes from, is Goodhue. And then, so my mother, I told you she's Finnish. So everybody thinks that I am just full-blooded Dakota, right? They ask if I'm adopted because I don't look like my mother. My father died, right? He died when I was 14, but he moved to Albuquerque. So my mother felt it was very important. She kept us connected to our tribal community, and they actually opened their arms up to her. And my mother, she learned Dakota, and she learned how to bead so that we could have that in our home, me and my sister. And through the programs that Prairie Island ran, we were able to have that. And my Uncle Art, my Auntie Steph, my Uncle Ray, they ran them, and they would take us all these places. And so that's the Prairie Island I learned from. But I know that there's another Prairie Island that's not like that. It's not inclusive, and my older sister is an example of it because she didn't grow up down here. She's an outsider considered. But here's the difference between Indigenous politics and Washichu politics. So they don't like my sister, right, on Prairie Island, because she didn't grow up there, because we don't have the same mothers. We have the same dad. But she's an excellent leader because she's been on tribal council for 13 years. They like her enough to vote her in every time, right? But they just don't like her, right? And with Washichu politics, if they don't like you, I watched this happen to our former superintendent with our school board members, is they'll strip you of every good quality you have and toss you to the side. So to me, I don't think that's the way to go. If there's one thing wrong, then we should offer training, we should offer love, support, and to make them better, right? But either way is wrong, right? Because we have an excellent leader, two excellent leaders that just exited out of their term in that area. So maybe we can do something to make it better by merging both ways together, and then maybe finding the appropriate people to lead us and listen to us and not try and control us. Hey, I'm not going to complain though, here in the state of Minnesota, for real. We've got it way better than every other state right now. We do have leadership that actually kind of listens to us. Not gonna lie, every day is a battle, especially when it comes to land management, right? Mm-hmm. That's really, but I do have to say that I'm very proud to come from Minnesota because, remember, I've told this story. Maybe I didn't tell you guys, but we're sinking and flooding at the same time on Prairie Island. We have about maybe less than 20 years if we don't change collectively. Remember, Mother Earth is sick. If we don't change collectively, I will have to disconnect from everything that I've ever known and intergenerationally, because I've never left. My ancestry, part of my ancestry starts here. But we didn't do it, remember? It's our ancestors. I have shared ancestry, I can say that. And so, but it is our job, once we know, to do better. And so, that's where we're going to have to, and it's not just the state of Minnesota, we have a responsibility to that Mississippi River too. So it starts with us, and it ends down in Louisiana, and that tribe has less than 5 years. So we have a responsibility from the top of the Mississippi to the bottom of the Mississippi. Could you imagine putting people from the start of the Mississippi holding hands all the way down to the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico? And if we hold hands really tight, we can move forward together, or we can move backwards together. But if we move backwards together, that's where most of our people are going to fall off and start dragging us. We can only go forward from here, right? But we can do it together. And we have a responsibility. That Mississippi River just doesn't end in Minnesota, does it? No, it does not. It's all connected. So the point of me telling you about my mixed ancestry is because my mother spent 60-some years making sure that her daughters know who they are and where they come from. She forgot about herself. My mom doesn't. She knows she's Finnish. But she knows nothing of her heritage prior to colonization. So in this work that I'm doing with my cultural preservation, I've been connecting with other people in their culture, with their cultural preservation. And in Red Wing, we've got a lot of Scandinavians. Red Wing's very similar to Northfield. We're just a Scandinavian state, I guess. And so through these engagement sessions, I was hoping to find somebody who has connections to their strong Finnish heritage so that they can help my mom learn about who she is and where she comes from. And so in January, I met Nina. And Nina's full Finnish, and she knows the language, and she taught me my first 2 Finnish words. Hello and goodbye. Hey, hey, and hey, hey. That was easy, wasn't it? And when I gave that to my mom, I gave her something. I gave her something back. Something that was always hers, that she had to put down to make sure that her daughters weren't drowning in a society where we don't exist. I'm really glad I gave that back to my mom. And even though I'm part Finnish too, right? I don't feel it. I've always felt 100% Dakota here, here, and here. And so that's why I've never stayed silent about my culture and heritage, and I've had Prairie Island go like this. So recently, I told you my husband's Hispanic. He was born in Mexico, and when he was 3 years old, he was brought over to the United States, and he's Americanized He's graduated from here. He's never been back to Mexico. And so when he was caught by ICE and detained, they wanted to send him back to a country he has no idea. And so what I did right away is I got the best lawyer in the state of Minnesota, and I rallied all my Prairie Island members back up, and then we anchored him here in the state of Minnesota, in the country of the United States of America. He didn't have to have an ankle monitor. He didn't have to have a phone call. They gave him back to me in 2 weeks because that's what I requested. It's because I had Prairie Island sitting in the stands the whole time. I had letters. And it's because one nation believed in someone so much. They stood behind him. And this is what the United States said. Because they knew somebody cared about him. A large group of people cared about him. And so, because that's the Prairie Island I got, and that's what was given to me. I told you I have privilege, right? That's the same Prairie Island I'm delivering to everybody else. Because we're all your relatives. We're all related. Some of us just happen to be mixed with different ancestry. That's all. But a majority of us now in 2023 are all mixed together. And that's beautiful. Because I'd have to say, Nicky Buck, she's pretty cool, but she wouldn't be cool if she wasn't mixed with all those wonderful things. You know? We all have a purpose, we all have a meaning, because the Creator created us. And He has a grand plan and a master plan. And some people are like, well, why didn't we do this work before? Well, it's because He had the plan. The appropriate people had to be in the spaces. And your ancestors, along with mine, had to come here and put you in the places that you are for a reason. It's called community. And we need to make sure that we help our relatives, especially our relatives that struggle with mental illness. We have to help them find their place in community. And we can't be so quick to toss people aside if they don't behave and act in a manner in which we want them to. So that's a little about me. I have a tendency to talk a lot and go past time. Where are we on time? 15 minutes left? Okay, good. I'm good. So maybe this is a moment where I stop for any questions, comments, and maybe ask my new best friend, Kim Lampy, who I've had the honor of getting to know through this project. So I'll stop there if anybody has any questions. So my brother Austin Owen, he was asked to do this one with Red Wing Arts. So
well, thanks so much, Nikki. This is awesome. But so as you guys know, at Bethel, we're looking at a land use acknowledgement statement that would honor the tribes that own this land, and so we were wondering, Nikki, if you have experience with that. And then also we had hoped that there would be some things we could do moving forward, not just have a statement, but what are the things we can do to honor, the history that's here and moving forward how we can help. So, yeah.
So Red Wing Arts has been working on a land. I can't even tell you how long, because they came to me a long time ago asking me, and this is something I it's not really my wheelhouse, so I don't really feel comfortable answering. Now, if you ask me about plants, that's totally out my wheelhouse, right? Or community engagement, 'cause I'm really good at engaging with the community. Diverse community, not just Indigenous people, but boy, you should see how fast I can get into other communities too. But so Red Wing Arts has been working on theirs for quite some time. Red Wing Arts did the work by hosting and guiding Honoring Dakota Project underneath their wing. And so when we had our Indigenous Art Market in July, my brother Austin did a blessing, and he did a land acknowledgement, and he did it solely for Red Wing Arts because he pointed out to the fact of how that they are actually living those words, right? by including Dakota people now. So here's my thoughts on it. So there was a point to tell the story about the land grab. That other guy who wanted it tried buying it, and in the process they went through, they gave Prairie Island 3 weeks to respond, and I'm just kind of like, we're a sovereign nation, and we have less staff than you guys, and we have to tend to the entire state of Minnesota. We only own 1% collectively as all the 4 Dakota tribes in the state of Minnesota, 1% of the land. But yet we tend to and collaborate with everybody else to care for this land. So we don't have 3 weeks, maybe try 2 months at the minimum. But they're not understanding that, right? So then they send it into land sale, and this guy wants to buy it because he's next to the land. And he wants to put history up, but he, of course, wants to forget our history. He wants to do colonial history and forward. And so that was where the comments, well, where do they want with it? You know, it's just a swamp, you know. And so we face, that's the point, we tend to land that don't belong with us. And right now we have a lot of issues. Like I was just talking to, I got a video from my brother Barry, that there was an encampment fire at a sacred site up in St. Paul at Wakan Teepee. How many of you are familiar with Wakan Teepee? It used to be Bruce Bento Nature Sanctuary. And now there's going to be a cultural center going up there. They totally restored it. It used to be a city dump. But the city of St. Paul don't work well with our indigenous community. But guess who does in the state of Minnesota? Winona, woo woo. Minneapolis, woo woo. Red Wing, woo woo. So all it will take is to get those 3 cities to go to St. Paul and say, knock, 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 knock. We better start including our Dakota relatives at the table and honoring their words, because the rest of Minnesota, this is what I say, the rest of Minnesota is going to use it and do it, and then the people who are original are going to look silly, right? Like St. Paul, that's our nation's capital. They're going to sit there and say they're inclusive but not do it when the rest of their cities are doing it. See, it's accountability, and we have to start holding our people to the accountability. And not in a mean way, right? We understand. Again, this is where we say, we didn't do the damage, but now that we know the information, we have to do better. We have to. Now it lies within us. And we're never going to do it without each other. That's the thing. Because it's God, Creator, whatever you believe in, it's their master plan. Because they love us so much. And Unshimaka, Grandmother Earth, or Inamaka, Mother Earth, whichever you refer to her as, she's getting pretty sick of her kids fighting, isn't she? Mm-hmm. She wants her children to get along. So that's why we have awful things like climate change happening. Because we don't listen, do we? So maybe I'll wrap it up with, if I answered your question. So being able to have people rally together and holding our policymakers, our government officials, our legislators accountable to, taking care of the land. So those are the things that we would love our allies to do. Like I said, we're building relationships with Winona, Red Wing, and Minneapolis. And, it's going to take all of us together. Because remember, I just told you the story. The U.S. likes to bully all other immigrants, but they didn't bully my husband because he had a whole tribal nation attached to him. So we have to show up in numbers. That's the thing. So, and doing the right thing, with land management uses. So I hope I answered your question in that sense. Most definitely. You're next on bat. You got to turn it on.
Hello. Okay, I'll stand up. My comment about land acknowledgements is a lot of our indigenous relatives will comment that they can be really hollow. If it's to check something off on a box. But that's not to say that with good intention and following the words up with action is really key. And what I've learned through this work is that you talk less and listen more, and you just show up. And that can take really simple forms, And so if you're thinking about a land acknowledgement, I would think about what's in your heart about, it's a personal journey, it's a congregational journey, it's a systematic journey. And I have an Elvis song that always plays in my head, a little less conversation, a little more action. Conversation is good, heart to heart. But just your presence in showing up with a land acknowledgement together. They kind of go together, because a lot of times they can just be show up, do a land acknowledgement. That's almost like, and then not follow up with action is even worse. So that's my advice based on my experience as a Washichu person. So yeah.
Anybody else have any questions they want to ask?
Yes, hello. This is kind of a question out of ignorance. Prairie Island sounds like such a wonderful community, and I don't know anything.
We have our own garbage too.
Okay.
But it's the fact that we have knowledge is the thing, and it's hard to apply that knowledge when the rest of the world operates. I think it's colonization, and it did a number on all of us, especially my own people. But the thing is we're the last ones disconnected from, trying to be disconnected from, so we have the stronger connection, right? And how I say is because colonization hit white people first, and so that's what severed. Because when I've worked with Norwegian people, they're like, we can't believe America, we're matriarchal. I'm like, I know we are too. It's just wild that, and so we have commonalities prior to colonization, and that's the hopes of getting to, is just sifting, removing that trauma from that land so we can go heart to heart and move forward in our parallel cultures, because they are very similar to one another. It's just colonization. There was an intention, it was done, and the devastating effects are now today, but we can fix that.
Okay, so I'm wondering, is Prairie Island a city kind of next to Red Wing? Is it considered like a reservation? Okay, and oh, okay, and then oh, cool. And I'm also wondering, like, what the population is and stuff. So
Since it would be helpful if I went back to the beginning. Dakota 1862 war. So, they put us on reservations. We can't leave. They didn't bring us our food. So it's eggs, pie, whatever they said was stolen. That's what sparked the war. So when they exiled, again, there's 500 and some federally recognized tribes. Prairie Island wasn't on that, and neither were any of the other Dakota tribes, because we're literally exiled out. So those exclude us, but there's another act of Congress that came in that signed into legislature that Prairie Island, Shakopee, Lower Sioux, and Upper Sioux have rights to the land that we squatted on the way back. Can't tell me, get out of here. I'm just kidding. So that's what happened, is because this is, not all American history is bad, right? So we're a little bit different Thanksgiving story compared to the East Coast, because the colonization came here later, right? We actually got along with our European brothers and sisters. We had the wonderful trading companies, because, do I have any beads on today? Yes. Beads are not ours. They're French. So, but they're so much easier to do work with than quill work, right? Do you know how we have to get porcupine quills to do our work? So, obviously, we're going to love beads more, right? So we had a wonderful, beautiful life together until the government came in and tried to industrialize Minnesota. Do you see that? And so when they exiled our people, and this is how they say Prairie Island became a tribe, is the Four Sisters. They squatted in Bay City, Main Rock area, with our Washichu relatives. And once the government came through, we went down to Prairie Island, and that's how we were established a tribal nation. So our membership is about 1,040 something, give or take, right? Because we got new babies coming in and getting enrolled, but we also have death happening to our community at astronomical rates. I used to work in the Land and Environment Department through the Ship and Tobacco Grant through the Minnesota Department of Health. So we did a lot of surveys, research, things on Prairie Island community, and living in Prairie Island is very different than what we saw on the paper. On the paper, our membership says that they feel their health is really great. I'm like, wow, that's weird because my health wasn't so great, and everybody else that I knew wasn't so great, and everybody that we're burying, their health isn't so great. You know, but again, we have a lot of membership that does not live on Prairie Island, and so I will stop right there with that question, the answer, if that helps. So we'll turn it over to Dottie.
I think we could talk a long time. However, people are waiting at the doors. So thank you all for coming, and thank you for our two speakers.